Welcome to the December 3rd, 2024 historical meeting of the Concord Historical Commission. We are conducting this meeting online in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The public may access this call through both telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask presenters questions and provide public comments on topics and discussions following the presenters' presentations and questions from the commissioners. To do so, please raise your hand in the participant function of the Zoom meeting platform. I, Alan Bogosian, will call on each commissioner for comments on a topic and then open the meeting for public comment. Once there are no public comments, I'll ask for a motion from the commissioners to vote. At this time, I'd like to ask for a roll call from the Historic Commission members to make sure that we have a quorum for this meeting. We can start with Nancy Frisella-Lee.
Nancy Frisella-Lee.
Present. Hi, Melissa Sawfield, present.
Nancy Wilson, present.
Doug.
Doug Ellis, present.
And myself, Alan Bogosian. So we have a...
You forgot one. Lauren.
Lauren Meyer.
Oh,
Present.
Oh, sorry, you guys.
and is Nancy Nelson here?
Yeah, I'm here, but I just got home, so I'll be
Okay.
back. I'll be back with my face in about 3 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So it looks like we do have a quorum of the Historical Commission. So we have a couple of items on the agenda. And so the meeting is officially called to order. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Elizabeth Hughes at this time.
Thank you, Alan. Over, but so the commission got a copy of a memo that was sent by myself to the deputy town manager regarding the fiscal 2026 budget for the planning division, requesting a new part-time position to support the Community Preservation Committee and the Community Preservation Act program within the community, thereby freeing up the senior planner's time and Clifford to focus on historic preservation for both the Historical Commission, the Historic District Commission, and the community at large. So and did extensive research, and I have to say, while my name is on that memo, it is all Anne, and just want to publicly acknowledge that and appreciate the extensive work she did documenting this critical need for basically all three of the committees, the HDC, the Historical Commission, and the Community Preservation Committee. I won't go through, all of the details and the data that was pulled together, but I will be coming to you, the Historical Commission, tonight, then the HDC at a separate meeting, and the Community Preservation Committee to see if you had any questions, comments, concerns about this request, and then secondly to basically advocate for this critical need in any way you can or you feel is appropriate. So whether that's as individual members or whether the commission wishes to formally write a letter to either the town manager, the select board, the FinCom, but really as the facts in that memo document, having one person support all three committees, it's not sustainable. And the level of projects that the Community Preservation Committee and the town is moving forward with a number of projects, but then thinking about the Historical Commission and the Historic Districts Commission with what is happening with the Historic Preservation Plan and just really all of the exciting opportunities that are going to come as a result of that plan. The need, Anne's already wrote a grant, a couple of successful grants, and I just see that work and that effort just expanding, as the Historic Preservation Plan is completed. So that's why I asked to be on your agenda.
Any comments? I mean, I can personally vouch. Elizabeth, the same with me. My name is attached to a lot of things that come out of the Historic Commission in the past couple of years, and it's from Anne. It's Anne has documented a lot of it and put my name at the bottom of it. So yeah, she's stretched more thin. So that's my comment.
Are you coming before HDC tomorrow night, Elizabeth?
No, not tomorrow night. Your meeting after that.
Okay. I'll save my comments
Thank you.
or questions, I should say.
And Doug?
What can we do to help?
So as I said, it's whatever the members and the commission feels they are comfortable with doing, and individually or as a group or both. But there's a lot of town departments across the board that we're all stretched thin. I understand that, and there's going to be, the town meeting in June. There's going to be a lot of big asks, and I realize that, but I also realize the magnitude of work that this division of 5 people does. We support 7 boards and committees. 5 of those are jurisdictional boards and committees, and if you look at just what the commission, the Historical Commission and the HDC have done since, Anne has come on board, and I say this with, all my respect in my heart, nothing against previous, people that have held that position, but Anne's level of expertise and has elevated what the commission does, in my opinion. And I think that has just really created an amazing, synergy, and this Historic Preservation Plan, along with the HDC, is really bringing a lot of things together that in the past hadn't been brought together. And whether it's historic preservation and natural resources, Anne's been helping out on the Warner's Pond Task Force. Historic preservation and sustainability. Anne has collaborated with the sustainability director on some things. This position and economic vitality, working with the economic vitality manager. So, it has really blossomed into this holistic approach of all these different elements, incorporating historic preservation in a very amazing community and historic, just a historic resource for the nation. So, and on the flip side, you have the Community Preservation Act and the funding and some of the amazing projects that are happening. But you think about the history of CPA in the community, there might have been 9 applications that first year. One year there were 19 applications. This past year, I think, Anne can correct me, but I think there's 12. That's every single year that requires either an MOU if it's a town project or a grant agreement. It requires, we process all the invoices and the reimbursements, and there's just so much tied to that. That is just I think from a town staffing perspective, we're talking, less than, I think I gotta look at want to get my facts correct, but we're talking, and can jump in. I think we're talking like, maybe a little less than, $40,000 a year. But the magnitude of what is going to, be accomplished by a part-time position is, it's twofold, threefold from that. So, so to the question, I leave it up to individual members to do what they're comfortable with, whether it's talking, with select board members individually or FinCom members individually or the town manager, or whether the commission, wants to collectively write a letter, advocating for this. We've got to get out there.
Yep. Lauren?
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan. I want to say just thanks to you, Anne, and to Elizabeth for all you do, because it's so great and important. And it's just been a joy to be on the commission, particularly with Anne, who I've known for a long time. And
Better than Belmont?
yes, and I was in Belmont. And I would say that this recommendation, one key point is that this is what many communities do. They fund the CPA support out of the CPA
Thank you.
admin funds. And so when the case goes to town meeting, to the FinCom, et cetera, I think it's really important to know is that the funding exists for this. It's just a reallocation of funds.
Well,
And
so let me clarify though. Yes, the CPA funding can go to fund this part-time position, but 12 hours of Anne's time is currently funded from CPA. So there is going to be an increase in,
I see.
our general budget line item
Right.
of that difference. So I just want to really make
So it's-
that clear.
So,
Thank you. It's minor then. Yeah. And can I just add one other thing, and then I'll go on. Alan, I strongly urge us to send a letter of support.
I've already noted that. I've already noted that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Melissa?
So
Melissa?
thank you. Well, I had to reiterate that. I think Anne knows, I think that she walks on water. She's just fantastic. But I have a question about procedurally. So we would be asking maybe for 12 more hours to come out of the CPA. Is that one thing, Elizabeth?
The request in the memo is to CPA funding to fund up to 19 hours.
Okay. So that's one thing. As a strategy, would it help? Not only we write a letter to the select board, to the FinCom, what if we enlisted all the various, the Natural Resources Commission, the ZBA, the Planning Board, the Economic Vitality, all these different commissions, if we could get, at the very least, if their chair would send an email to Mary Hartman at Select Board and Eric, or whoever head of the FinCom. It's pretty easy to write an email, but the work of the commission in this new preservation plan, if we sort it out and it could sort of strategically apply it, affects all these different entities in the town. I just think about one thing, the concern about affordable housing, the tear downs that we fight all the time. If we could get the ZBA to perhaps rezone or consider changes in the zoning bylaw, but that would have to come, I think, as a partnership with the Historical Commission, working with them. So at any rate, I just think we should request of these others also to support this initiative. That's all. And Alan, I would be willing to help send out emails requesting that of these people.
Right. To the people and all, the town manager, and everyone else.
Yeah, Natural Resources,
Yep.
the Sustainability Committee,
Yep.
yeah, Planning Board.
Okay.
Are you going to ask the Planning Board? You work with them, Elizabeth, right?
So at this point, I was just starting with the three critical ones.
Okay, well,
Um, And I, so my position, it kind of walking a fine line of.
oh, okay,
a
I
fine
can
line
walk
of
a big fat
advocacy.
line.
Yeah, that might be a
So-
question for another time. Let's
Yeah,
continue with our
got it.
discussion. Nancy Frisella Lee?
Hi, of course, I'm fully in support of this. Anna's terrific, and I don't know how she does everything that she's done, and just
No
what
one
we're going
does.
to discuss tonight. All the work that I can foresee that, drawing up, I think that alone, earns her this upgrade to her position. What are we gonna do before 2026? Because would have a year to go, right? When would this,
this makes it through the town manager's budget and FinCom and the whole budget cycle and makes it into the town budget for the warrant. Then it would become effective July 1st of 2025.
oh, that's great. Okay, that's sooner than I thought. And this does have to go before town meeting, right?
Correct, because it represents not the, for two reasons. One, it's a general budget, operating, budget increase for the planning division to basically backfill currently, Ann's time, it's roughly 31, a little over $31,000 a year in CPA funding to her to fund the 12 hours, which she does far more than 12 hours a week on 12 hours a week on CPA funding. But so it would be creating the new position, which would have to go through personnel, the personnel board, and then it's town meeting warrant is the increase in our operating budget to backfill the time for Anne, just becomes part of the planning budget, and that becomes part of the budget warrant article for town meeting.
Okay, do we need, just procedurally, do we need to take a vote on this, our commission tonight, so that we can, move this along, or do we just need to write a letter as a group?
I
Vote's good.
No, I
think
we just sit down and we write a letter as a committee to the select board, to the town manager.
and
And then
FinCom.
that has to, and the FinCom, and that has to appear before what date to get on to the town meeting, to the warrant articles?
Well, so I probably, if a member of the commission wants to draft a letter, I think it should come back to the commission for the commission to accept and, vote like you normally, vote to accept a letter. And then the whole budgeting process has already started. So, I don't know exactly when, the town manager is currently working on the budget. I think we have to have our operating budgets in, I don't know if it's within the next 2 weeks or by the end, by the end of the year, so I'm going to include this in our operating budget. So, I would imagine within the month to have letters sent.
Yeah, and I might be stepping out of bounds here, but I would like as a committee for us to get this done within the next 2 weeks. That's what I would like to do. And that's just me speaking.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Nancy?
Which one, me?
Yes.
I just, Elizabeth, I missed the first few minutes of what you were talking about, and the amount of money coming from CPC, would that raise the allowable amount of what CPC can spend on administration to the max?
No. I think, Anne, correct me if I'm wrong, the next round, so we were at spending 40,000 in administrative costs. Um,
And what percentage was that? I think, I can't
I'm gonna
remember
leave-
what
I'm gonna leave it.
percentage can be allocated to administrative costs in
I think we
CPC.
upped it to 60.
60, what?
Anne, do you remember what the request is?
I think the CPC allows 5% to be spent on administrative costs, and currently we spend about half of that, like 2.5%. So
Could you talk a little louder, or I'm turning up my volume, but
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. The CPC allows up to 5%
5%.
on administrative costs, and you currently spend less than half of that.
Oh, interesting.
so theoretically, if somebody wanted to fuss about it, I suppose you're trying to match the hours with the percentage or with the amount of CPC funding. But there, I've been trying to convince them for years that they should expand their expenditures and administrative costs, so. Maybe it could be even more if that becomes an issue. Just a thought. That's all. Except for that, I certainly do agree with this idea.
Any other comments? Well, it looks like everyone's in total agreement. It's Anne is
This is for the long term.
For us.
This is the right thing to do for this program, for
Yeah.
all three committees.
yeah.
Regardless
don't
of
think-
who is in the position.
Right, I don't think anyone has any doubts, and I would like to get this done within the next 2 weeks, as a committee, so I don't know if anyone has any objection to that. But we'll put something together within the next 2 weeks.
You mean you want us to trust you and then we don't come back and vote? Is that what you're saying? Or can we vote by mail? I forget. If that's possible.
You cannot vote by mail. So I don't know when your next meeting is.
Next month.
I think isn't it next week or?
Next week.
Next
Yeah.
week.
Oh,
Next
the
week.
regular meeting. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, sorry.
So you could vote on a letter at your regular meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is coming up soon.
right. Okay, I'm just taking notes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments?
And I'm not sure if there's a member that wants to
Do we?
take a first draft at the letter. I'm reluctant to have either Anne or I write the letter
No.
for you.
No, I'd do it. If anybody else wanted to also volunteer, that'd be great. Some people have a little more expertise in the details than I do, maybe.
We'll definitely provide our input. How's that?
There you go.
Okay,
That's good enough.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Okay.
for fitting me in. I appreciate
thank you,
it.
Elizabeth.
And Dennis, I'll see you in, I think, a few weeks.
2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Look forward to it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And now on to the historic preservation planning. Anne, did you want to talk about that?
So I distributed a couple of early drafts from Elizabeth Watson of Heritage Strategies. The two drafts focus just on the National Register nominations and the inventory. I had quite a lot of questions myself when I first read it, and I'm sure you all do too. There were some issues that we had discussed with them, I think it was back in August, just about, readability and length and that sort of thing. But for this discussion, I think even to focus on the content and what they're actually suggesting, like, do you agree? How do you want to focus your time, right? Does this, do you think that this will fulfill the goals, the preservation goals for the community? Or are there other ways that you could better use your time, when it comes to these two items, the National Register nominations and the survey? and never mind all the other components of this plan, including, you know, the having enough financial resources to make it all happen, which we were just discussing a few minutes ago.
I came across this somewhere, but could you clarify the status of the results of the survey or the meeting that we had, the public hearing? And do you think it has any bearing on this discussion?
Let's see. Right, I could do the minutes of those meetings. There were a few comments. We don't have those minutes yet, but
Okay.
there weren't really very many comments on the survey work. Although, of course, in the community-wide survey, you know, people were so enthusiastic about documenting the, you know, the untold stories and the diverse voices and making sure that all perspectives are heard.
And did that also come through at the public meeting? I think I did see a summary of what the survey showed. Is that correct? We have that summary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Melissa?
thank you.
You're mute.
So I'm sorry, I was unmuted. So Anne, you know, I've talked with you before about this. I was hoping from them we would get kind of priorities of what we need to do to we take the whole of Concord, and what does Concord need about it preserving its historic character? What does that even mean? And the emphasis that they've had on National Register, I think, is nice, but I know that even if if your home isn't on the National Register, it still could get torn down unless it's within the HDC. So I question how, if that's a priority, should that be a priority? I don't know. I am still more interested in strategies about how can we encourage homeowners not to tear down their property, but rather to renovate. What kind of tax incentives are there available? That kind of information I was hoping we would get from Heritage Strategies, and how best we could pursue that from a variety of points of view, PR, education. So I am kind of frustrated with that. I also didn't, you know, I thought we've gotten so many different documents from them. I don't always know what I'm supposed to be evaluating. Survey work, I think, is important because it will identify and tell us more about the properties that we don't yet have any information about. For example, the grant that you've written for the CPC to do the mid-century modern properties, that will be helpful. But emphasizing National Register status, I sort of questioned it. Anyway, that's, and I don't know anything about a preservation plan. I told you before, this is all new to me. Just some of my comments.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think this is a big topic, and you know, I'm still struggling getting my head around it. And also, you know, I'm new to Concord, but I think apropos of what Melissa just said is that it's very hard to evaluate bits and pieces without having the whole plan context for us. And the second thing I totally agree with is that it's really important for this plan to make priorities. And those priorities need to be urgent priorities that support these larger objectives. And then the third thing is that it's my view that we have to really get realistic about what can be accomplished in a difficult fiscal environment. Now, this has always been true for preservation, and we do have the CPA, so we can chip away at some of these recommendations, but we need to be kind of strategic about it. And then last, there's a lot in here about what I would call amending, as opposed, which is the technical term, amending existing stuff versus the identification of new stuff and the protection of things that aren't protected. So I feel like there's some tweaking needed of some prioritization. But the other thing is that I'm not sure this does is, I guess this is point number 5, is the why. Why is it important to survey? Or why it doesn't really do that. But I would say point number 6 being, there's no question that being listed on the National Register or being identified as eligible for listing is sort of the benchmark for preservation. And everything that we do locally, nationally, trickles down from these national programs. So, it's a little tough for me being new to Concord, but that's sort of my takeaway, big picture, from these drafts that we received. I mean, I think one has to really dive in to the nitty-gritty and look at every recommendation, decide, do we need to move them around a little bit to get them in priority order? Do we need a little bit more justification? I think then at the end of the day, we hope that the plan has an executive summary that really gets to what are the biggest issues. And if mansionization and tear downs and, untold voices are maybe 2 of the biggest issues that have surfaced, then those need to go up front, and we need to figure out what recommendations support those. So I'll shut up because I talk too much, but that's fine. I'm still working to kind of get a big picture understanding.
You got it.
Is that helpful?
Yes.
I speaking from historic districts, or maybe just for myself, I'm more interested in the big picture thing. My concern about Concord these days, and where I spend my energy, is the erosion by little nibbles, little bits, little pieces of the charm of the town. And what I'm concerned about is coming up with a philosophy or a feeling about it. We don't need more granite curbing. We don't need any more signage in the town, particularly about every damn sidewalk is now, pretty soon there'll be flashing lights at all of them in town to warn you for crossing. I'd love to know from the town how many people have been injured or killed at these crossings that they're trying to protect. But my worry is that we're eating away this place a little at a time as we pave more sidewalks, as we do more of Lexington, or we do more of Wellesley to this town. And I think it'll totally destroy the character if we're not careful. And that is my thrust in the preservation plan.
That
Great point.
Agreed.
I think that. Oh, sorry.
Nancy Friselli?
Yeah, I agree with, I don't want to reiterate what everybody else has said, because I wholeheartedly agree. As I wrote to Ann earlier, every time I get one of these, my eyes just start glossing over. I just want to rewrite the whole thing because I don't think it's well written. There's a lot of, it's just a lot of verbiage. And so I feel like people who are from if we want citizens, when this is finally finished, when citizens, because we don't just want it to be for us, we want it to be for the whole community. And when they pick this up, their eyes are going to gloss over too. And so I think it just needs a lot of reorganization. And we got these 2 parts to work on today, the survey and then the register issues, on the register issues, but we don't have the whole, I don't even know what the whole table of contents are. We've gotten so much information, I've just kind of lost the plot of where this fits in, as Dennis says, to the whole big picture. And so you know, and again, yeah, like there's a lot of work that is to be done in this. Like they suggest, for one thing, do an archaeological survey of Native American sites. Well, there are just so many tasks that they're just all going to add up, and there's not enough specificity about who is going to do all this work and what order it's going to be done in. And as everyone else has said, prioritizing. For example, this what we were given to read today, it has quotes about what we as committees wanted the planners to look at, and that's in this report. And I think that's just redundant. We don't need to explain the process of how we've gone about this preservation plan within the report. It's just too much. And yeah, how are we going to get this out to the public? How are we going to get this in a bite-sized form that everybody can embrace? And how, we need a strategy for we need a plan for what we're gonna do after this plan comes out.
We need a plan to address the plan.
Plan for the plan. Okay.
Nancy Nelson?
I'm sorry, some of what I was going to say has been said, but I do want to say that if you go all the way back, you'll find a lot of things about the table of contents and different things that we've been talking about. But I totally agree with the idea that I don't have any idea right now how big this is likely to be or how small. So the comment about excessive verbiage that's obvious. It can be corrected with good editing by somebody who knows the business, I would think. So the executive summary would and the priority setting, I think, are really important. Some of this stuff, and I think we shouldn't forget this, is required by Mass Historical.
Yep.
So there's stuff in there that probably means nothing to many of us for
Right.
many things, but you have to have it in there. So a little grace on that, I think it'd be good. But the editing of extraneous, useless phrases, words is really.
So at this point, Ann, is this our job to go through and decipher all this and edit it and?
No, excuse me, no.
I
Right.
have a feeling that they're sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall and asking you to figure out which parts of this are important to you. So it might help to talk about what you like, right?
But
Yeah.
we have talked about going back to what Dennis is saying, but I think we see a loss in Concord, and they see it too. In conversations we've had with them, they see what we see, and they have expertise. They have been all over the country working with different communities. I think many communities are suffering the same things that we are. So I'm hoping from them they can help us prioritize the kinds of things that practically we can start doing, short-term and long-term. And we've asked that on multiple occasions. We just need bullets. We don't need, a lot of stuff can be put in the appendix. Even a lot of the stuff that I know Mass Historical requires, some of that can still go in the appendix. It's still part of the plan, but what can we do to help preserve this town?
Lauren?
Yeah, I think that what we really need is what I would call an action plan. And that is has a set of objectives of what we really want, like the preserving community character, or retaining, maybe not use the word preserve, but retain community character. Seems like that is a really big issue. And then a set of recommendations that are, punchy and bullety. There's a clear sense of priorities. There's a timeline, and also there's suggestions on how you get there. Like, these are projects that could be funded through CPA. These are projects that maybe you could go to MHC for a grant. These are projects that maybe could be done, you know, by the town. Don't panic, Ann.
Yeah, well,
But do you know what I mean? That there's a way to, how do you implement these recommendations? It's very clear, it's very punchy, it's right up front. And then this kind of stuff that we've gotten is sort of the background justification. And that, so I do think that we want to make sure that the kinds of stuff that we've gotten that have to do with surveying and documentation support whatever those punchy action recommendations are going to be.
But I thought this has been done. Nancy? Hanson?
I didn't mean to interrupt what you were going to say, Alan.
No, go ahead.
But I was going to say, what Dennis has described and what I could not agree with more has to do with what the DPW sees as its mission to ensure the safety of the community. And it is incumbent upon us to get together maybe in a more head-to-head way with the DPW and figure out how we can be safe, as well as not have 10-foot sidewalks and 6-foot this, that, and the other, and vertical curbs and signs and lights.
Well, you know,
That's the biggest kind of obvious thing every day as you drive through town. You see
And
these.
keep them from applying for grants where they have to spend the money on something. So they come up with new projects in order to spend this money that's available, and they're not projects we want.
Right.
That's exactly right. They
Well,
follow
I mean,
follow the money and
They follow the
call
money,
it
then they got to
safe-
figure out what to do with it.
They
Okay.
call it safety. No, safety is a very big umbrella.
Right.
And
you know, even though the scenic roads bylaw, we could try to add more roads. We could pursue the 18-month demolition delay. I want stuff like that. Those are things we can actually do.
Yeah.
It took a lot to get the scenic roads bylaw on the books. It took a lot to upgrade the demolition delay, but I would really like to see if we could get an 18-month delay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to contribute anything new here, but being an architect and having had to write many of these similar kind of reports, it was I felt the same as many others in trying to sort through this stuff. I got sort of halfway through and got bogged down, and just one thought, and I guess this is on their shoulders, but to sort of work backwards and. If somehow this summary needs to be put together as an executive summary, action plan, whatever you want to call it, with priorities. And if you can't do it in 2 pages or even 1 page, the public will never understand a half a page. So it has to be so clear what the here's what we're dealing with. Here's the action plan, here's the priorities 1, 2, and 3, and here's how we might do it. It may be a working backwards process. As people said, you have to have all the sort of background data to make it a quote unquote report. But it may be, I've been forced into previous life saying, why don't you start with the executive summary and then fill in the details after, and it forces you to write with bullets and very succinctly, and then get your act straight so that when the person on the street picks it up, they can make sense of it, because that's what it's all about. Thank you. I'll make one other comment. As an architect, from my perspective, the nibbling away to me when I drive around neighborhoods, which my wife and I do sometimes just to see what's going on, the tear downs and the sameness of the new construction, I find just unbelievably painful. And we're actually doing, in terms of towns, we're so much better than so many other wealthy towns in the United States, which have houses that you can't believe, you just can't believe. So in some respects, we're doing quite well because the developers are reasonably sophisticated, but there still is incredible sameness over the last just 10 years, house after house after house.
Mhm.
And how does one control that? It's
We should
I don't
put
know
a
what the
ban
answer-
on farmer porches.
Well, I can attest to that, Tim. I can attest to that, Tim, because I inspected about 7 of them in Lexington today.
Yeah,
McMansions,
Yeah,
minimum 5,000 square foot houses.
yes. And there's basic economic, I know some of the developers know them pretty well, and there's
Yeah.
basic economics that's going on that they think they're doing a good job. So how do you start the dialogue
Yeah.
so that it's a collective dialogue on these? Because those aren't nibbles, those are big bites after big bites after big bites.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I just want to say for a minute that one of the watersheds is going to be the decision that is made over the Lowell Road property. And
Yeah.
that is going to set some kind of standard and some kind of base for the town if the developer gets what he wants on that piece of property. And my fear is we may be heading in that direction. So I'm trying to find out more about it, but I think that's going to be a watershed moment when we see what happens
Do
there.
you think that's going to set a precedent, though?
I think it could, yes. And the precedent is that the towns need to keep developers happy and to build properties of that size on a space that the community feels is inappropriate for it is going to set a standard in the town.
Well, maybe the town should spend more time on business development in the center of town versus housing development outside of town.
I agree with you, and the business support for our tax base is eroded. It used to be at least 10%. It's probably 5% now, and the whole rest of it is born on housing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
By the way, you know that the Novo development over here in West Concord, they're talking now about tearing down a portion of what used to be the Welch's commercial space
Right.
for a parking garage. Because they had intended to have the parking underneath, underground parking, and they're changing. So that's another thing, Dennis. It's
Right.
less commercial space available to contribute to taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim, did you want to say something else, or Tim, your hands up? Okay.
I'm
One
good,
thing,
thank you.
There are success stories where developers have actually not torn the house down and renovated them. I see them here in West Concord. We haven't made plans for the preservation awards, but somehow applauding the efforts of
Yeah, I
these
agree.
homeowners and developers who actually changed their mind. Some of them have come before us. We said no, and they did the right thing. And they're handsome properties.
What are you thinking about the one behind the post office parking lot?
No, actually,
Did we ever
well,
recognize that?
I'm not sure if we did. That was a few years ago, but actually
Yeah,
there's some over here in West Concord. I mean, when I walk by with the dog, I always say, geez, thank you very, very much for not tearing your house down. It looks, they're great. So I don't know, that's public relations. That's not, but, the preservation awards, we got, 80 people or something in the room, but I don't know that it had much other impact. But, strategies that might be available to us to encourage people not to tear their house down.
Well,
Yeah.
having an awards program you could really count on. I mean, COVID interrupted that, I think, quite a bit.
Yeah,
But having something like that became something that people sought and that people listened.
yeah. So, yeah.
So I guess my question is, how do we get through a stack of paper to bullet points to get this?
Start with the executive summary. I like that idea.
I like Tim's idea. Yeah, start from the end. Start with the end.
Lauren?
That's where I was going to go. I think it's worth it to look at the drafts that we got, at least with regard to National Register and Survey, and juggle those in terms of priorities or any other comments, but that the feedback back to Elizabeth and her team should be that we're finding it difficult to evaluate the recommendations in isolation, and that we really need to talk about, you know, we really need to see the big picture of, you know, recommendation, basically the executive summary, before we can. We really want to see that, and then they need to provide the details to support those recommendations.
But, can I ask a question,
Go ahead.
Lauren?
Yeah.
How much does this stuff, though, specifically respond to Mass Historical?
I don't
And
know.
how
the
much
answer.
do we even care to fuss about this, except for to make it shorter and more concise? I mean, the information's not bad, and if it's required, maybe we don't even need to spend that much time on it.
Yeah, it's good point.
Can I respond to that? I don't know the answer about MHC specifically, but I think this is more appendix material.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't worry so much about making it shorter. What you want to do is pull out the salient points into whatever this executive summary action plan thing is going to be.
Yeah, that's fine. This seems like nuts and bolts.
Yeah,
And-
but I do think that it's really important to look at the content to make sure that it's got the priorities. Like for me, I just wonder about going back and, you know, should amending existing documentation be a priority versus identifying some resources that haven't been identified yet.
Yeah, that's,
So that's an example for me where I'm not sure that the order and the priorities as they're presented are really quite right. And I think if we're going to have a recommendation about something like archaeological investigations or documenting, you know, indigenous landscapes or whatever, that needs to be explained. And it's not. It's just a one-liner.
it's just a list.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nancy, for Lily?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just want to make a specific comment specific to what we're looking at, the National Register properties. I had a lot of guests this week, and they wanted to go to Newport. So we went to Newport, and just walking around there just for a very short time, I noticed walking along the street that quite a lot of those houses did have National Register plaques on them.
Yep.
And I don't know Newport very well. So, you know, as a visitor, I enjoyed seeing that. And the points that they made that are in here, when you can find them buried in everything else, are good ones, that when you encourage owners to understand where they live, and the plaque is on their house, it educates everyone, the owners and the community and visitors. So it was surprising to me when I heard that Elizabeth, her analysis of how the percentage of how many houses are not on National Register, that was a little bit of a surprise to me, because I've been working on this monuments and plaques project myself, and I had looked into that, and I had wondered that too, but I didn't realize that there were really so many that are not. So that is one thing that I would like to be in the plan, to encourage somehow to reach out to owners, maybe to just send a letter to all these people, you know, from our committee, and just say, do you know, and you know, here's and this is how you could do it, and we would support you doing that. So yeah, I do support more National Register, encouraging people to look into that.
Dennis?
I would agree with that, but I just don't see the National Register the priority, because what does it do for the community? And what is it? I mean, if you're a National Register property, that keeps you from being destroyed by federal funds, or I mean, it's a very limited sort of protection.
it doesn't.
I just don't see it as a priority. There's a mindset here that is not our community. It's sort of this national viewpoint of what is important for the National Register, for the Mass Historical Commission. It's just not. It's not a high priority for me, unless I'm missing something here, and you guys can tell me if I am.
It's not a priority for me. It's just an observation.
Oh no, I think we should. No, Nancy, I agree with you that
Oh,
it
yeah,
should
yeah.
be in the plan,
Yeah.
but it should not be the highest priority in the plan.
A question about that. So wouldn't a lot of these properties actually be, also, I asked you, Anne, witness structures? Aren't a
Right,
number
that's-
of those, because that group of people, we are through the 250 thing, we are engaging with, or we will engage with. So we do have an opportunity to reach out to them through this event in February, right?
But Melissa, to Dennis's point, they'll be getting local recognition versus national recognition.
Well, we
They'll
can
be,
talk-
it's,
No, what I'm saying is we have an opportunity when we're there with them to say,
Yeah.
you might look into this. But I
Right.
also think, of course, I agree with Dennis that it's more the DPW efforts, what Nancy talks about too, that we're losing the fabric of the community. We're losing what made Concord.
Concord,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's,
Whatever that is, and we've been asked to define that, and we, none of us can define it. We it's like what I know it when I.
that's why I jumped over 128 from Lexington, because Lexington lost the Lexington community. And I see it when I moved to Concord 38 years ago. Concord is starting to lose the Concord.
You couldn't say it better. You go to Lexington and it's homogenized.
Right. And I grew up there. We've been there since the 50s. But
Yeah.
So there are still streets and like West Concord where there are still kind of Queen Anne sort of looking houses, relatively small houses that in some ways, with some areas we know that were developed to provide housing for the people who work for the prison. So we've talked about perhaps creating, if not an historic district, Dennis, perhaps, what do they call them, neighborhood districts or?
Conservation district.
Yeah.
Neighborhood conservation district.
Less
Yeah.
restrictive, but still allow an opportunity for you to reach out to neighborhoods who do have pride in their own neighborhood. A lot of the folks here in West Concord are very proud of where they live, and they like kind of this massing and the scale of the housing here. So we have some opportunity here, but I mean, I'm not entirely sure how to do it, but I could come up with some ways. But that's what I'm hoping this plan will help us focus on that. On
Right.
practical ways that we can help preserve Concord. And that it as important as a National Register property, the fact I know that it doesn't really protect it. And
Yeah.
Concord's important anyway. We don't have to identify more properties. The United States understands that Concord's important. Not as important as I think Concordians think it is, but that's something.
No, you're wrong. It's equally as important.
Lauren?
Yeah, I had one thought. This is more for the Historic District Commission. I was surprised to read the recommendation that study reports be done for the local historic district, because it's always been my experience that those study reports get done before you designate a local historic district. So that was interesting for me. And I thought, well, that could have a practical application if it helps support the work of the Historic District Commission in, managing the details of what happens in local historic districts. So that to me could have a practical application. So that was one thing that I thought was interesting, but I'd be interested to hear from the HDC about what they thought about that recommendation.
Could I comment on
No
that?
comment.
Comment about that, because when I first moved here, I was on the HDC, and each of us was sort of assigned, or in groupings, we were assigned to look at the historic districts, even though, they're presumably that happened when they were formed. I don't know what happened to what we did little write-ups, but so it's like reinventing the wheel. Um, yeah.
So could I chime in?
Yes.
Sure.
So, right, when I first came to Concord, I was, trying to do research on the historic districts, and I found, right, that many of them don't have area forms in Macris. It's, really disappointing, and it's because, the historic districts were founded, by special act in the 1960s, even before, the state adopted, statewide legislature to allow historic districts. So it sort of preceded that whole effort. So where I found the best descriptions is actually in the HDC design guidelines. And I think that, that could actually really be, that it could be an easy effort, we could like do it tomorrow kind of thing, and just really work on those design guidelines, on the descriptions of those on the historic districts, and the history, the context, why they're there, and what distinguishes them from each other, because they are all very different with different character defining features. And so that would help not only the HDC members make decisions, it could help the owners, the people who actually live in those areas too, to
Typically those, area forms, if they're done well, they're like a mini version of a historic district nomination, right? And so they would have descriptions of each contributing property, including some sense of what the character defining features are. Like, is there a garage that's contributing? I mean, that was a big issue in Belmont, garages. But so I think doing that in some way would support the day-to-day work that and decision making that HCC has to do in those local historic districts. Just a thought.
right.
So then it becomes less arbitrary, because I think it can be perceived, I'm just saying this from personal experience, not directed at the Concord HCC, but I think if it's in writing and if it's an area form at MHC, then at least you can say, well, it's not an arbitrary opinion. It's in writing.
And yeah, I think in the email, Melissa had said that really the only thing that, it's really it's for prestige and recognition. And so, we've been hearing through the survey and, the public meetings and things that, the people in West Concord don't feel as if they do get the recognition that they deserve. So, I would think that if there was an effort to create a National Register district, that West Concord could be the area for that. And, back when we were doing the demo review for Prairie Street,
Yep.
There was that really, really fascinating story of this house that had been owned by someone who had worked in the reformatory. It was incarcerated, right? And then came out and lived in Concord. And so it's not, the houses were not just owned by the people who worked in the reformatories, but also the people who had been once within the reformatories and actually were reformed by the industrialists who, helped develop Concord. So it's,
Or maybe they never belonged in prison in the first place.
Nancy Nelson?
I'm just thinking about the irony of making a modest neighborhood cool.
Yeah.
And what that will do to the property values and the
Yeah.
people who can no longer live there. So we should, I mean, that's a big problem in my mind, the coolest, I mean, I think I can think of so many places that were just sort of eccentric and cool, and then they became very chic. And and
Yeah.
the people who lived there and created those neighborhoods had.
Yeah.
So you're afraid that that would maybe gentrify? If it were to be recognized, it could be gentrified?
I wouldn't even necessarily call it gentrified. Gentrified to me means something a little bigger, but I don't know. Is that what you're asking? Am I talking about gentrification?
Yes.
I'm
But that's
not so
already
much the
happened.
size, not so much replacing a 1,000-foot home with a 5,000-foot home.
But-
It's more than that, even if the houses stayed the same, but they were very cool because they're nearest transportation now. The architecture's interesting, it's small, but but people like it and they come in, they fix it up and they restore it and all of a sudden it's a California bungalow again.
And but that's already happened in West Concord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
already
yeah, I
done.
think
Absolutely.
I think that's something to remember though, if we're talking about affordable.
Well,
Keeping housing affordable and how historic preservation can help that problem.
well, I'm not thinking it's not going to be affordable. I think that, what are they? That ship has sailed, as they say.
Yeah,
But
this
at
was sailed, yeah.
But
But at
and,
least-
and Dennis has brought that up before at combination meetings, that it's very difficult
Yeah.
to afford to live in West Concord now.
Yeah. Or
But
yeah, many
what
places.
I'm advocating for is that it doesn't need to be all you don't have to tear it down and have a cookie cutter house, just as you
Nope.
were talking earlier. It could be just, renovate what you've got if you need to change it or you need to a little bit more space, but to keep something that is got character instead of the I don't know, it's the Bushnell properties. I forget the different guys who do the building and as you said, the farmhouse court.
Modern farmhouse.
Thank you.
Modern farmhouse, that's the hottest thing, yes.
They're everywhere and in the same color scheme everywhere. But to applaud the neighborhoods in West Concord that preserve just the way they are, they can. Anyway, it's the scale of the house, and and separate identities instead of farmhouse modern.
Dennis,
I've got to leave you, but my sort of final words are, I would like to see the preservation plan lay out a vision for the community going forward. What we want this community to be, what we think the community is, and what we want to preserve in this plan. Then I want to have steps. What do we need to do to keep it that way?
Yeah, exactly.
And that should, to me, should be the heart of the plan. All the other stuff, and you're right in saying it should be all in the addenda to keep the Mass Historical Commission happy. But we need to come out with a plan that the community can buy into and support. And I think we need to come up with a statement, an all-encompassing statement that describes what this community is and what the vision for it is in the future, and then lay out those steps to make sure we get there.
I think you should transcribe that. That was an excellent statement.
Anyway, I'm leaving you. Goodbye. I ran out of wine, so I have to go. Bye.
I think we all need
I
some.
did it.
That was perfect.
Yeah. So is that what we're supposed to be getting from Elizabeth Ann, or is this something we have to come up with?
Right, well, that's supposed to be what they're providing
Right.
up front, but I have a feeling we're gonna be doing a lot of wordsmithing to make it, Concord, because it doesn't seem as if, she doesn't live here.
Right.
And, we've been asking for this all along, and, frankly, we're just not really receiving it.
So should we set our own guidelines? Should we start as a committee, start working towards our own little guidelines? And bullet points, as Tim was saying?
Well, I mean, there was, I hope the feedback from the public forum, that there were goals, and then there were the bullet points. And it seems now that, they're adding to those bullet points, but they're also, having a lot of filler, like language around those bullet points. There were some, Mass Historical has, a preservation plan that's very concise and very to the point. It has, for each section, they have a vision statement. They have, like operations, building capacity, documentation, protection, housing and economic development, sustainability and resiliency, and public outreach and education. And for each item, they have, like a page.
Yep.
Summarizes their goals or summarizes the big ideas, and then they have the bullet points. It's very simple. It seems like a good.
Nancy?
I have just a picky little fine grain question. I noticed that in the description of the national park resources, that I think I know the reason why. There's the 1966 description, condat.ec. It's on page 4. But it doesn't, it includes the 27 buildings on Lexington Road, Liberty Street, and Monument Street. I think the park is updating its National Register documentation. And part of that would include adding Barrett's Mill Farm.
I wondered about that.
So I think, and by the way, Minuteman National Historical Park, Minuteman, 2 words, historical park. And throughout any document, you can, it's correct some places and not in others. Those 2 picky things, but you know that, Anne, and Elizabeth's aware of the change and whatever changes are going to be made there.
Right, I noticed that she did say that the national parks, nomination would be the model, as if it's
Yeah,
happened.
I remember.
It hasn't happened. A
Yeah.
lot of that is town property. The historical commission should be involved in that. I haven't seen the maps. So that's a major effort, and that's going to take, some time.
I was just referring mostly to the Barrett, James Barrett, Colonel James Barrett House. But it's the whole area. You're talking about the whole area now, which is a partnership with the town and the park.
Right. My understanding is that they are including the town, the Barrett farmland.
Yeah.
It's actually
I'm
by
sure.
the town and under the Natural Resources Commission, but that's going to be part of it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Anyway.
And of course, the Robbins House, that's the other addition. Right, because that wasn't there.
But that's within the national park boundary, but it's on town property.
Exactly, right.
So
So-
it's not really a national park site per se.
Right, yeah. But they were trying to include it in their National Register nomination form,
Oh, yeah, okay.
that's what I've heard. So, right, and so I was also looking at, so she was suggesting that, the commission update all of the forms for everything that had been considered National Register eligible, which also seems like that's a ton of work, and what is the value to that?
Exactly. That's where I think, sure, yeah, if we had unlimited funds and resources and staff time, but that's where I think you've got to take this list and prioritize it. And in my mind, it's really got to relate to what the overall objectives or vision for the plan is. And also, meeting some of these critical needs, in terms of protection and or affordable housing and, documenting these undocumented. Why would you go back and redo something when there's things that you haven't
Even done.
documented yet? To me, that's kind of backwards. So I think there's good stuff here. It's just we need to put it through a priority filter
Mhm.
and get the most critical things to rise to the top, and those go into the action plan. And the other is, yeah, this would be great if we had unlimited time and resources. Unless there's a reason, and that's where I don't feel that the recommendations really gave us. Like, I kept asking, and in a way I'm a good reader on this because I know a little bit about preservation, but I'm new to Concord. So I kept wanting to know, well, why? Why do we need to do that? Is there a reason? And before you spend, $150,000 to do, even one of these projects, I want to know why. Why would you do it? And how does that relate to these other preservation? I did that table of preservation tools, which don't put it in the plan because I just did it off the top of my head. But, there are a lot of other things we could be doing that have a more direct impact on, on activities and alterations in town.
Right, and I was wondering if, the 1995 master plan has, it prioritizes the various properties. And it's just based on the history of the property.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe this should, would we use the same criteria today to determine priorities? Or are you thinking about interpretive value? Housing, obviously, it's located.
Also threat,
What's that? Oh, of course,
threat.
threat, right.
Yeah.
The location near the train stations, is it in the MBTA community zone? All of these
Yeah.
different things. And, there may be overlap and there may be a way to prioritize in that sense too. And obviously sustainability and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you have to provide feedback to Elizabeth on these documents, or can you provide the feedback that hard to evaluate until we have a sense of what the priority recommendations are going to be?
well, I think it's up to you. I mean, right. What's your preference? It is, right, so obviously, I mean, we can sort of look at this little chunk, right, and set priorities for this little piece, but where, how does it fit into the whole picture? There are so many
Yeah.
things that we should be doing, and we don't have the rest of it yet. Although, of course, Elizabeth has sent along another document that does take some of the recommendations that was shared at the public forum, and she's added quite a lot more. And again, it's kind of, sorry, but throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah.
So, and it's very, very dense and very long. So I'm wondering how best to share that with you. I mean, I was kind of thinking, maybe go back to what was discussed at the public meeting, like go back to where we were, and just add bullet points for the new things that she's added and leave out everything else. But again, I guess going back to what you said earlier, that maybe we shouldn't be looking at that at all, and go back to the very beginning and what really matters. And is that what we really want from her now, and put everything aside?
Oh,
I know.
Maybe we need to give them an assignment and say, we need to step back now. We've gotten all these documents and it's become overwhelming, and we need to take a step back, do an executive summary.
I thought we've told her that already.
We have asked that. Can I just defend Alan? myself and Ann have met with them in also other weeks that you guys haven't all met with them. We have said what everything you're saying tonight, every single time. We want shorter, less, again, a lot of this can be put in the appendix. We want bullet points, very succinct. We want priorities. That it's really maddening because, I thought we were going to be talking about something else because 2 weeks ago I got a bunch of stuff from Elizabeth. That's what I thought we were going to talk to tonight. And then it just, I don't know where to start.
Right.
Well, they know that we're talking about
Four.
this, right? And what are they expecting us to come back with? Because we haven't really talked about the substance of it. So what is going to be the feedback to them about this meeting?
That's a
I
good
guess it's
question.
gonna be bullet points.
What would you like the feedback to be? I mean, I
Well-
can share the minutes.
I'd be willing to sort of help out here if that's helpful. And I mean, I have other things to do. That's the only thing. But I think we need to really comb through it, suggest, what are our priorities versus the way they have framed it, and also convey that, this is only one piece of a bigger plan that has to deal with more, perhaps concrete and practical solutions to help Concord. So, but I part of me sort of struggles a little bit with putting the time in on this.
Because it's not gonna hit home.
Yeah, other than to say, rewrite, some of these things, like the rewriting of stuff, the amending of existing documents, I just wonder. I would agree with Ann on that. It just feels like that is a very low priority. However, I do wonder about the local historic districts. That's the one thing that, gave me pause. I think doing something, whatever that is, but, area forms or the beefing up the design guidelines, whatever, you guys think is best. But I think that has a real practical. And then if there are any priority properties that aren't documented, that should be, that would be important priority. So, and then the beefing up stuff that already exists, that's just a paper exercise, and I'm not sure it's going to have any tangible effect. Extending the demolition delay for 18 months, however, that's a tangible thing. Creating more single property local historic districts, that's tangible. That has a real effect.
Or put a $20,000 bounty on it.
Yeah, having a bigger, penalties, whatever, all the things that we need to do to making DPW or suggesting the DPW go before the Historic District Commission when they have projects. There are a lot of things that are more tangible that will have a bigger effect. So I think that's why these drafts are hard to evaluate.
Right, and the HTC has also talked about expanding the historic district and.
Yeah.
Right, and so.
That's tangible.
Right, tangible, and
Right.
also, if it needs additional documentation, that would be the area to focus on.
Right. So that's where I think you filter out of these documents, what are the things that rise to the top? And those are the things that need to be emphasized. And then that would be the feedback back to Heritage Strategy. Right.
So would you like me to take try to do an initial pass at what I think is priorities and see if you all agree. So that to spare you some time, Lauren.
Yeah, I think,
Can we bring it up for the discussion on next week or?
I'd be willing to come in and, Anne, if it would, I don't know what's helpful. I don't know, Melissa, what do you guys think?
Well, Lauren, you have probably the most expertise of all of us next to Anne. If you'd be willing to do it, I actually, as Alan knows and Nancy, I'm going to go back to work part-time, so I'm going to have less time, but I think that would be really helpful. I mean, you mentioned something about it. We don't even have an it, right, Anne? I mean, I have pieces of stuff and I don't even know if it's the same piece, only juiced up. So I don't know what it is because we don't have it.
Right. Right.
I used to print out everything and then I stopped doing that because it was just too expensive and confusing. So
Yeah.
I guess I think going back to them and saying these are our priorities, which I think we just kind of articulated. We want practical solutions to how we can help preserve the town of Concord and the character. And actually, a fair amount of that was expressed in comments in the survey.
Yeah.
Some people were really thoughtful, and I know they read through every single one of them because they transcribed the whole thing. So I know that they know what they read. Just more spaghetti, and I agree with you, Anne, totally, is not what we need. The idea was, I was excited about this when we first talked about it 2 years ago with Marcia Rasmussen, thinking, aha, this is going to give us a roadmap as a commission, as the HDC, maybe in the planning board, about how Concord can approach the next 5-10 years. And our work as a commission, because any single one of these things takes a lot of time. When I worked on this scenic roads bylaw, it took a year of a lot of work, and I had this terrific Nancy Frizzell Lee and we had 8 or 9 other folks helping. It was a lot.
Right. I agree. I agree totally with you. A roadmap. That is what you want. Even with a flow chart and a timeline and how much it's going to cost and who's going to do it. And, that's a plan.
I think they've worked with so many communities. I think they're awfully smart people. I've talked to other people who know them very well, who have high regard for them. So I think they know their stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, we don't need all of it thrown at us. We want less, but precise.
I thought the forum went so well. Am I on mute? Unmuted? Yeah. I thought the forum went so well. In fact, it more than met my expectations based on that.
I agree with you.
They're coming up with. So, to me, they've really taken in all this information, but they haven't whittled it down and organized it properly. And I don't know why. I don't know if multiple people are working on different parts of it or who's controlling it. Like that's something that I don't understand. Who's doing the writing? How many people are working on this?
Yeah.
I think it's a writing style where there's justification embedded for every point.
Yeah.
So with parens, it's semicolons, it's a lot of footnotes, all that kind of stuff. And it's a style.
Yeah.
And perhaps in an appendix, that's good because you can go back and then you can find the reason why. But, we're not, but for whatever this executive summary is going to be, we really don't want that.
Whoop. There you go.
There you are.
All right. Well, let's
Beating that horse.
we can go on and on and on.
Done.
We've been at it, yeah, an hour and a half. We're gonna get together next week. And, right,
Yes.
you want to see if we can put something together? I'll offer to help myself.
I mean, I'll make some bullet points too, and then just send it your way, Lauren, or to, you know,
Sure.
or Anne,
I
or
mean-
to whoever. I'll send it to you, Anne, and then you can
Yeah.
send it where
I
you
mean, we
need.
have to avoid public meeting law unless we're,
Yeah, I'll send it to Anne.
Yeah.
and then, you know, but I'm not going
Okay.
to spend a lot of time too, because it's just, you know, as I wrote to Anne, I started reading, so wait, I want to start rewriting from right from the beginning, and
right. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what we should do, Anne. I'll write you up some notes.
Perfect.
me
And
too.
I might just use the document and put some comments in, or I'll sort of do a page of what I think how the priorities should be framed, where we have too much, where we have too little, and then I'll try to do that sooner rather than later. And then maybe we'd have something we could look at the next meeting. What do you think?
That sounds great. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And
Nancy, you're-
Nancy Nelson and I will work on
Yeah,
letter. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? I officially adjourn the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.